Hello, my name is Anna Koenig, and today my presentation is on victim rights, with the main point being on child abuse in the United States. What is a victim? To begin, a victim's rights is defined as by the National Center for Victims of Crime, a person who has been directly harmed by a crime that was committed by another person. History of victim rights. There are quite a few groundbreaking court cases that changed victim rights. The modern crime victim right movement arose in the 1970s. The Linda R.S. v. Richard D. trial with the Supreme Court decision. This trial passed that parents who fail to support the child without being married are held accountable. At the time, by law, only both parents, if married, had to support the child. Following this trial, Ronald Reagan in 1982 released its final report, which advocates victim rights. He emphasized that victims of crime have been overlooked. The report provided recommendations for government and services which followed the Victims' Rights Amendments. Shortly after, the Victims of Crime Act was passed, which was updated by 2004 and has 8 specific rights, which I will discuss in the next slide. Victims' rights. There are 8 laws in the United States for citizens that are granted. The first law, the right to be treated with dignity, respect, and sensitivity, infers that citizens will have a fair opportunity in trial. The second law, right to be informed. Citizens will receive information on services and resources to assist their rights trial. This means when law enforcement takes action, they will explicitly tell the victim their granted rights by law. The third law, right to protection. Citizens have protection from threats by law or other persons. This will give the victim protection if needed, such as police watch or escorts. The fourth law, the right to compensation, ensures that citizens will be reimbursed if the crime caused medical damages to person. The offender will be responsible for those expenses if found guilty in court. The fifth law, the right to restitution from the offender, ensures the victim receives repayment from property damage or other costs. Just like the fourth law, the offender will be responsible to pay for damages if found guilty by law. The sixth law, the right to prompt return of personal property, which ensures the citizen will receive his or her property back if it's needed to be taken for further investigation. The seventh law is the right to a speedy trial. This ensures the victim and offender will participate in trial as soon as possible. The eighth law, right to enforcement of victims' rights, which means all laws will be enforced. Children by law have the rights as well, no matter the age of the child. What is child abuse? Child abuse is defined as maltreatment towards children that identified as physical abuse, neglect, emotional abuse, and/or sexual abuse. 2017 report on child abuse. On the image to my left, you can see that there has been 4.1 million child abuse cases, which involved 7.5 million children from the 2017 maltreatment report. Children that are under the age of 5 have a higher rate of child abuse, and on an average, 5 children die every day from child abuse. Neglecting is the biggest form of child abuse, which is lack of care. For example, not feeding a child or leaving the child in a car while it is running is a form of neglect. Over 80% of cases, the parent is the abuser. With over 60,000 sexual abuse reports, over 90% know their predator. Over 50% of predators are women compared to men. Out of those 4.1 million children, more than 3 million receive prevention and post-care services. Children affected by child abuse. The Department of Justice emphasizes how traumatic a trial can be for a child. By putting a child in trial and asking for he or she to retell the story can be just as traumatic as the experience itself. The Department of Education Services strives to protect the children, which allows, in some cases, a child to not have to be in a courtroom during the trial. The court can appoint a guardian ad litem, which is someone who represents the child. The guardian makes recommendations on what is best for the child. The recommendations can be no contact orders, home replacement, and or more. A child does have the right to be accompanied by an adult, but the adult does not have the right to speak or hold the child's hand. Recent news on child abuse. Boy Scout leaders accused of sexual abuse. Current news on child abuse is the recent Boy Scout leader scandal. Over 7,000 victims have been identified by Jeff Anderson since the 1950s. Sexual abuse survivors have come forward and others have remained anonymous. The Boy Scout Association stated, "We believe victims, we support them, and we have paid for unlimited counseling by a provider of their choice." With over 200 reports found in New York in the past month, the Governor Andrew Cuomo has signed into law that sexual abuse claims and prosecutions will be based on age, not how long ago the prior incidents were. This means all child abuse crimes, even if brought forward 20 years later, the offender and victim will receive trial as the age the act occurred. The new law privacy protection also entails that survivors can remain confidential, which could lead to many more coming forward because they don't have to relive their experiences in front of public eye, even if the event occurred the day before or 20 years ago. The death of Anthony Avalos. The first time Family Services was called to Anthony's home was when he was 4 years old. He was then removed from the home temporarily, but then he was sent back. Anthony wasn't the only child being abused. His other siblings were being beaten as well. It has been revealed that there were 12 different referrals on the child's case. It was stated there was not enough evidence. But from evidence, IT was found that he and his siblings were beaten, starved, locked up, whipped with a belt, dangled upside down from the staircase, and forced to fight one another. Anthony was found dead from a traumatic brain injury. Anthony's family is now publicly questioning why the Department of Children and Family Services didn't do more. Both parents were death sentenced, but that does not bring the child back. It has now been released that there are multiple cases similar to Anthony's. The Boy Scout scandal and Anthony's case are not the only cases that have affected children, but many people think that with the increase of resources, there will be a decrease in the number of cases. But so far, the system is failing children. Resources for child abuse. April is known as National Child Abuse Prevention Month, and the United States is increasing support and understanding that a child deserves a life free from abuse and neglect. In the above image, the slogan is, "They can't, you can." It is very true. Family, friends, strangers, or even law enforcement should report any suspicion. There's a variety of hotlines to call: Child Abuse Hotline, Child Protection Services, Child Abuse and Neglect, National Domestic Violence Hotline. When you report a child abuse issue, enforcement respond right away to investigate. Depending on the situation, the child may be allowed to stay with their guardian or removed from the situation. and these are my references.